Welcome back, friends. I'm happy to have you here again for Midnight Stories. Imagine we're sitting around a campfire as I tell you magical adventure stories to help you relax before bed. Let's take a peaceful journey into the quiet wilderness and drift off to sleep under the stars. But before we begin, don't forget to leave a like. The sharp ring of my satellite phone broke the quiet of the early morning, waking me up. I reached for it in the dark, squinting at the screen. 4:37 a.m. Dispatch. Ariana mumbled as I sat up in bed. "Seth, we've got a situation," said Carla Whitman, my longtime partner and the coordinator of our search and rescue team. Her voice sounded urgent, making me instantly alert. A hiker's missing in the Nahala. His wife reported him overdue last night. I swung my legs out of bed, now fully awake. "Details?" I asked. "Bennington Carl. He's 52, an experienced hiker, and knows the area well. He was supposed to check in with his wife 2 days ago from a campsite near Miller Creek. She says he's never missed a check-in before." I got up and went to grab my gear. When did he start the hike? 5 days ago. He planned a week-long solo trip, mostly off-trail. His wife says he does this every year. It's like a personal challenge for him. "Any health issues?" I asked as I pulled on my boots. "None we know of. He's in good shape, no history of heart problems or anything like that." I nodded to myself, going through the possibilities. Even skilled hikers could get into trouble out there. Out there in the wilderness, even a small problem, a twisted ankle, a fall, or getting lost could turn into something serious. "All right," I said. "I'll get ready and head to the trailhead. Can you send me his route?" "Already done," Carla replied. "I've also got a team gathering. They'll meet you there in about 2 hours." "Got it. I'll start checking the area and call if I find anything. Be careful out there, Seth," Carla added, her tone softening. "There have been some strange reports from that area lately, probably just hikers getting spooked, but keep your eyes open." I paused, my hand on the door. "What kind of reports?" She hesitated. "Just odd things, noises at night. One hiker said he saw something big moving through the trees, but it was dark, and he'd been drinking." "Probably nothing. I just thought you should know." "Thanks for the heads up," I said, pushing down a small knot of unease. "I'll keep you updated." I ended the call and finished packing my gear, my thoughts racing. In nearly 20 years with the Forest Service, I'd seen all kinds of things these mountains could throw at someone. But Carla wasn't the type to share rumors or tell ghost stories, and her tone unsettled me. As I loaded my truck and began the drive to the trailhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that this search wasn't going to be routine. The pre-dawn darkness seemed heavier than usual, and I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I realized. The first faint light of morning touched the sky as I pulled into the empty trailhead parking lot. I double-checked my gear, making sure everything I might need was ready. I packed everything I might need for a long search: a first aid kit, extra water, high-energy snacks, and spare batteries for my flashlight and radio. I clipped my satellite phone to my belt and slung my rifle over my shoulder. I rarely needed it, but out here in the remote wilderness, you had to be prepared. An aggressive bear or mountain lion could show up when you least expected it. As I started up the trail, the forest around me seemed to come alive. Birds began to sing their morning songs, and a gentle breeze moved through the trees. But something felt off. There was a tension in the air I couldn't quite put my finger on. I've spent most of my life in these woods, and over time I've developed a gut instinct for when things aren't right. Right now, that instinct was screaming at me. I tried to push the uneasy feeling aside and focus on the mission: find Carl Bennington and get him home safe. And that was my job, and I was good at it. But as I followed Carl's planned route deeper into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every snap of a twig or rustle in the bushes made me turn around, looking for something. I didn't know what. But whatever it was, it felt out of place. As the sun climbed higher, its light created shifting shadows through the trees. I reached the first waypoint on Carl's route, a small clearing near a bend in Miller Creek. It was a popular camping spot for hikers. I scanned the area for any signs that Carl had been there. That's when I saw it. Near the edge of the clearing, partially hidden by a fallen log, was a scrap of fabric. Its bright blue color stood out against the forest floor. I moved closer, my heart beating faster. The fabric was torn and stained with something dark, something that looked too much like blood. I crouched to get a better look when a low, rumbling growl broke the silence. It didn't come from one direction. It seemed to surround me, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I spun around, gripping my rifle, scanning the forest for whatever had made that sound. I held my rifle ready, turning in every direction, but there was nothing there, only trees and shadows. Still, I felt it deep in my gut. I wasn't alone anymore, and whatever was out there wasn't anything I'd ever encountered before. I keyed my radio, keeping my voice low. "Carl, it's Seth. I found something, and I think we're going to need a bigger team." I stood frozen, straining to hear anything else. But the forest had gone deathly silent. Even the birds had stopped singing. The stillness sent a chill down my spine. I forced myself to breathe and focus. Whatever I'd heard, whatever was out there, my job was still to find Carl Bennington. I carefully bagged the torn fabric as evidence and marked the spot on my GPS. Then I continued along Carl's planned route, staying alert. The uneasy feeling of being watched only grew stronger. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow made me stop and scan my surroundings. By midday, I reached the spot where Carl had planned to camp on the second night of his hike. The site was untouched, no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there recently. This wasn't a good sign. If Carl had followed his schedule, he should have been here days ago. I radioed Carla again. Carla, car, you copy? Her voice came through clearly. I'm here, Seth. What's your status? I'm at waypoint 3. No sign of Carl or any recent activity. I'm heading to the next site, but I've got a bad feeling about this. There was a pause before she replied. Understood. The backup team should be arriving at the first waypoint soon. Do you want them to catch up with you? I hesitated. Part of me wanted backup, but something inside told me I needed to keep moving forward. Negative. Have them start a grid search from waypoint 1. I'll keep following Carl's route. Copy that. Be careful, Seth, Carla said. I will, I replied, though I wasn't sure how careful I could be when I didn't even know what I was up against. Be careful out there, Seth, Carla said. Check in every hour. Will do, I replied. The further I went into the wilderness, the tougher the terrain became. The trail faded away completely, forcing me to climb over mossy boulders and push through thick undergrowth. The canopy above grew denser, leaving the forest floor in constant shadow. By dusk, I reached a small clearing next to a rushing stream. This was where Carl had planned to camp on the third night of his hike. As I approached, the beam of my flashlight caught something shiny near the water's edge. My heart raced as I moved closer. It was a water bottle partially buried under some leaves. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. Written on the bottom in permanent marker was a name, Carl B. I grabbed my radio, my voice tight. Carla, it's Seth. I found Carl's water bottle at waypoint 4. There's no sign of him or his camp, but this confirms he made it this far. Understood, Carla replied. What's your plan? I swept my flashlight across the clearing. The growing darkness made it harder to see. I'm going to set up camp here for the night. It's too dark to keep going safely. I'll start again at first light. Okay, Seth, stay alert. The rest of the team is searching through the night and will work their way toward your position. I signed off and began setting up my small tent. As I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The darkness seemed alive, closing in around me with an unseen presence. Just as I was about to crawl into my tent, I heard it again, that low, rumbling growl. This time it was closer. I grabbed my rifle and spun around, flashlight cutting through the night. But there was nothing there, just trees and shadows. I climbed into my tent, but sleep didn't come easily. Every crack of a twig or rustle in the leaves had me sitting upright, my heart racing. And always just at the edge of my hearing was that growl, as if it was circling, watching, waiting. A deep, menacing growl echoed through the forest, sending chills down my spine. At the first light of dawn, I packed up quickly, eager to keep moving. I had just slung my pack over my shoulder when I saw them tracks. They led away from the clearing, and as I crouched to get a better look, my blood turned cold. The tracks were massive, at least twice the size of a bear's print. Long, curved claw marks gouged deep into the soft earth. They were fresh. Whatever made them had been here in the clearing while I slept. With shaking hands, I raised my radio. Carla, it's Seth. You need to get the team up here now. And tell them to come armed. The morning air felt heavy, almost suffocating as I followed the tracks deeper into the forest. They didn't follow Carl's planned route, but veered off into a remote part of the Nahala I'd never explored before. The terrain became harder to navigate, steeper slopes, thicker underbrush. An eerie fog began to roll in, limiting my vision and adding to the sense of unease. I checked in with Carla every hour as I'd promised, but the signal was getting weaker with each call. By midday, her voice was barely audible through the static. Seth, losing you, careful strange reports, then nothing but white noise. I was on my own now, cut off from the outside world, following a trail that led deeper into the unknown. Turning back wasn't an option. Not when these tracks might lead me to Carl, not when every instinct told me that something terrible was happening in these woods. Pushing through a thick patch of rhododendrons, I stumbled into a small clearing and froze. The ground was ripped apart, like some enormous beast had been thrashing around in a frenzy. Caught on a broken branch was a shred of fabric, bright blue just like the scrap I'd found before. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I carefully bagged the new piece of evidence. Whatever had happened here was violent. I tried not to dwell on what that might mean for Carl. The tracks led to a steep ravine, plunging into near total darkness. I hesitated at the edge, every instinct telling me to turn back. But I couldn't. I took a deep breath, clicked on my flashlight, and began the dangerous descent. The air grew colder with each step. The rocks were slick with moss and condensation, and my flashlight barely pierced the darkness, lighting only a few feet ahead. Around me, the oppressive silence pressed in, broken only by the sound of my ragged breathing and the occasional scuttle of unseen creatures in the underbrush. I don't know how long I climbed down into the abyss. Time felt meaningless in the dark, but finally my feet found level ground. I was standing in a vast underground cavern. My flashlight's beam swept across the rocky floor, revealing more of those massive tracks. But now there was something else, drag marks, as if something heavy had been pulled along. My stomach churned as I followed the trail deeper into the cave. Then the smell hit me, a rank animal stench mixed with the sharp, metallic tang of blood. I gripped my flashlight tighter, its beam trembling as I moved forward.